You know, I think it's about time to let y'all ask some questions. So why don't we open it up to the audience? Yes. And please speak up because we don't have microphones so that everyone can hear you. Yes.
Ryan, can you repeat the name and location of that festival for documentaries?
Hot Docs.
Hot Docs.
It's in Toronto.
Toronto.
And True False, of course. You know, David will be at Hot Docs. Right?
I will actually be at Hot Docs for the first time.
Yeah, so go and you can meet David there and talk to him more about his festival. No, David's festival is doing some amazing work for young filmmakers for first-time features that they're doing there, and they're bringing everybody together, and it's helping filmmakers meet. And he's networking new filmmakers with like some master filmmakers, some really great people, and you know, and not to mention David's just a great person to be around, and he's a great wealth of knowledge. He's a great guy, and he will help you out, and he will offer advice, and that's another key, you know, is get to know the programmers, get to know people who are, you know, the producers, the programmers. I mean, they are your allies, and they actually will champion your work in the future. I mean, if they discover you, you've pretty much got a programming friend for life. They may not show everything you program, but you will always be on their radar, and they will always be talking about your work, because it may not work for them, but it might work for somebody else's festival. And certainly we share, you know, information and ideas and programming recommendations around the world.
Good. Yes?
I have two questions. The first question is, have you ever seen the movie, one of you, and you said you just called everybody on your list of friends and said you have to see this movie, and every one of you has seen it?
All the time.
So you've all gotten the same movie at once?
Oh, a lot.
On one basis.
I mean, a lot of people really, people that know what they're doing get their stuff out there, you know what I mean? So
that was my question, because, you know, I was thinking if you didn't see a movie, do you pass it on to someone else?
Absolutely. I mean, you know.
And then the other question I have, I'm very nervous, is how do you choose panelists? How do you guys get where you are now? Can filmmakers be part of panelists, and how do you choose them?
Ask him.
Yeah. You know what you do? You get into a film festival, you make a film, that's where it starts. Make a film, get it into a film festival, and go there.
Yeah,
and
that's how you get on a panel.
What happens is we get this list of people who are coming to the festival, and we're like, oh, we're going to do this panel, this person and this person and this person looks like they would be interesting on the panel. And that's really what it comes down to, based on whether it's the subject matter of their film or the work that they're doing, whatever it might be. That's how it happens. I think Dr. Neuendorf in the back.
Thank you. I have a related question, and I realized I'm not quite sure of this, even though I know Bill Gensler, I've known him for many years. How do you get selected to be on a jury? Willa, you're on the Central Eastern European jury, same thing?
Well, I've been on the Toronto Festival in the jury and in smaller festivals in Germany, and I know one of the personnel here, of the staff here. Brenda Bentin was with our festival years ago, and we had she wrote me because she wanted the address of Volker Schlöndorff, and I helped her, and somehow we had contact again after years, and she knew what I was doing, and she invited me to come here. Yeah. She heard that I'm now in the pre-selection team for the Berlinale. That made that made it possible.
Being on a jury is like the Bentley of going to film festivals. It's so awesome. Yeah. Like, it's the best way to see a fest in the world.
But it's also like Sean was talking about, you know, like the people you bring in, the filmmakers and all these things. But I think also, and you know, that tier of film festivals where things get exposed to buyers and other programmers and things like that. But I think that also, if you're good as a regional festival, like Bill Gensler's incredibly good at this, he brings in people he knows that have, and you know, you give them a jury position, you give them a panel to be on, you give them one of these things, and that way they'll see things by the filmmakers. We can be here and be like, so Bill, what should we see while we're here? You know, like in Philadelphia, I try to bring in as many buyers as possible just to hang out, and they don't feel the pressure of being at Sundance or something, but then they get there and the first thing they ask me is, what do I need to see? Because they can't turn it off. You know, it's like, so.
Jim.
So do you have a recommended action plan for an emerging filmmaker who doesn't know anyone in the festival circuit? What would be a course of action if you want to get your film out there?
You need a nice box of business cards. You need to get on a plane and go to that film festival and spend a week or so before researching who's going to be there Most festivals have an
She's talking
industry
about
list.
before you get into a festival.
Submit.
So I feel like, I mean, you need a sales rep, do you need a publicist for this, or, you know, like?
I'd say absolutely not. Like what Ryan said earlier, which is, I mean, there are lots of people who I know and whose opinions I know, and when they hand me something and say, you really should watch this, you know, I will take that seriously, and it will be one of the first things I watch. That doesn't mean that if I don't know you, I won't still watch your film. Yeah, those people who have a reputation, whose opinions I trust, I will watch something faster. And that's the only difference. And I think that's true. That's true for Sundance. Like, I'm an associate programmer at Sundance. It's true for MyFest. Like, that's the only difference. And I think that's really important because a lot of people, again, that I talk to a lot of people, there's this sense of like, if you don't have a sales agent, if you don't have a producer's rep already, if you're not distributed already, you can't even get into a festival and they want to watch your film, the door's already shut. The doors are totally not shut. It's tough. We get sent 800 films, we program 35 of them. You know, it's really, really tough to get into a lot of festivals. But that doesn't mean that if your film is great, we don't want to show it.
Well, can I ask, out of those 800 films that are, or out of the 35 you choose, how many of those are from submission versus how many of those have you found? And
7.
7 are from submission. So what you're saying is that in fact very, very few films are admitted from submission. Most films are essentially curated.
But that doesn't.
But that's because, like, I go to Sundance, I go to IDFA in Amsterdam, it's a big documentary festival. Those are the places that have the world premieres of the biggest, best films. So it's natural that a smaller fest will show films after those fests, and we'll discover them there.
But
it's not.
David had the only festival in the world. All 35 would be exhibitions, and they could be the same 35 films.
Right.
In Philadelphia, what's the percentage?
I think it's probably about the same percentage of the program. It's hard to tell because at the same time, like, I'll count the submission percentage and I'll say that, but a lot of it will be like, oh, I saw this here. Somebody also sent it to us, you know.
Right.
But we do take everything very seriously. I feel like absolutely you have to do that, one, because somebody sent you their work, but two, they paid to send you their work.
Exactly.
So I'm not going to take their money and not take it seriously, you know what I mean? We take everything very seriously, so.
And the submission regulations are on the internet. Every festival has its regulations in the internet. And most of them in Europe, they charge a submission fee, not Rotterdam. And Rotterdam, I wanted to add, is really a wonderful festival for small US independent films. They take very small, very unknown first debut features, and it's really maybe the most interesting for unknown filmmakers.
Easily the most
Rotterdam
interesting.
in Holland, in the Netherlands.
And they treat you incredibly well in Rotterdam. I mean, it's one of my favorite places to go.
Yeah.
And in terms of discovering new filmmakers, that's a really great spot. If you have, you know, they'll take you really seriously, especially new filmmakers, especially daring ones.
There's some resources online. Actually, IndieWire has a pretty great and growing section of fests that they kind of put out. They put together a year or so ago a list of 50 festivals that they just thought were important, and you can then read about those fests. So like, yeah, do some research. Like, don't waste your money sending to 100 festivals just because that's 100 festivals. Like, do what research you can. Try to find places where people talk about stuff like that online. I mean, I know documentaries, so there's a group called the D Word, which is a filmmaker website. You have to apply to be on it. But people on the D Word talk about festivals all the time really candidly. And they'll say, I went to this fest, they didn't do shit for me, don't submit there. And they'll say, this fest was great, they really helped me out. So that's a good resource for documentaries. I'm sure I know there's others.
Also, Without a Box is an amazing resource. It's, you know, if you guys don't know Without a Box, it's a festival submission site. So it has information on a ton of festivals, and it'll hold all the information on your film so that you can send. It'll fill out like whatever you need. Like, you put in the information once instead of writing the cast list 20 times. You just go onto Without a Box, find the submission for true false.
But Without a Box doesn't give you any sense of festival quality.
Oh no,
like,
no.
Festivals pay them money to promote them, so Without a Box sends you a blast update and says, check out this fest. It's just because that fest gave them some money.
But it is a great place to not only submit more efficiently, but also to kind of go through and find some festivals. Like, the one thing we haven't talked about in all this festival talk is specialty festivals. Like, Bryce and David and I all work for specialty festivals. And it's like, if you make an LGBT film, you want to go on and find all the LGBT fests and try to think about
And
submitting to all of them, you know.
In Bryce's case, I mean, who doesn't want to premiere a film in New York?
Right.
I mean, and be in that environment and meet people. I mean, I've had some amazing panel experiences. I remember the very first time I ever heard about an amazing doc that played her a couple years ago was a film called Prodigal Sons, and it was because Kimberly Reed was on a panel, and she was just working on the film about, you know, this amazing story about finding out her brother was the illegitimate grandchild of Orson Welles and Rita Hayworth, and she was originally the captain of the football team, and she transitioned to female, and it was, you know, it's this crazy story, but I was just sitting there, it's like, I've got to find this film. I know about it. And I monitored that film for like 3-4 years, I think, while it was going, and it's a beautiful piece of work. It also played here. I mean, that's a barometer of how great this festival is. I mean, some of the best stuff in the world plays at this festival.
But one of the ugly truths about the festival world and premiere status is that, you know, if you have a genre film or an LGBT film or a documentary, you don't necessarily want to play one of our fests first, right. Because that will disqualify you for Sundance, will disqualify you for Toronto, in most cases for Cannes. So you do want to start with the biggest fests, you know, because if they take it, they want a world premiere. That's really important. And later down the road, we'll still show your film.
And the specialty festivals, to a certain extent, I mean, like, we need content, right? So like, we can't look at the same number of films. So for Fantastic Fest, we're looking at all the genre films that are made in a year. You know, I'm sure it's the same with you guys with the amount of LGBT content that's made in a year, the amount of documentary content. So to what it does serve you, I'm sure it's still a ton of content, but it makes the pool smaller because we're only looking at genre films, right? Yeah. So you want to submit there because you have a better chance of getting in. There might be, you know, 300 films instead of 500 films or something, you know, whatever the number.
But on the other hand, that, you know, I mean, a film that you guys launched huge a couple years ago was Down Terrace,
right,
which world premiered at Fantastic Fest, and it was probably the smartest move they ever made because they were a big fish in a smaller pool, and they got a deal. And Ben Wheatley's new film, Kill List, was in South by Southwest. And it was also, actually, it was in the Fantastic side.
We have a section in South by Southwest, so it was in our...
And it got picked up again, and again, it's an amazing, amazing gut puncher of film. It's a great film. So in some cases, that can work for you over sometimes playing that big festival. I mean, it can, you know, playing, you know, by being in that spot, Ben now is, you know, is going to be, you know, you're going to hear a lot from him in the next 10 years. You're going to see 2 or 3 more features out of Ben.
So we have served a little bit as the exception too. David and I both talked about this last night, but we have this thing where we do secret screenings so that we don't announce it beforehand, but then it'll end up being something like David shows a couple films every year that end up going to South by Southwest right afterwards, but they'll let them show in True False because they're a secret. A film that you showed this year that Sundance technically premiered that we actually showed first is a film called Troll Hunter that came out this week, and it's a faux doc about searching for trolls in Norway, and it's really a pretty awesome film. But you know, so we got away with we did the real world premiere. They had just finished the film. They got on a plane with a hard drive and showed up and screened it for us. So, you know,
that's cool. I have to announce that we were losing David. Unfortunately, he has to attend a screening, so we will give him a round of applause. Thank you so much for joining us, David.
That means you went to the right.
I'd like to add something.
We could get you, Michael. We could get you back.
All right, cool.
Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, I'd just like to add to this. Sometimes it's better to be in a small festival, because in those big prestigious festivals you can easily get lost with your small film, with your debut film, and in a smaller festival you can get more attention. Don't disregard the small festivals.
Right.
I think that's very good advice.
No, I think what David was saying was that the ugly truth is that you probably won't get into like Sundance or Toronto or even in some cases Berlin, right? But you take a bunch of films that are in Sundance, but not necessarily in all these festivals in Europe. If you play other places, but at the same time, you might be able to be the big fish in a small pond and just say, you know, forget these big festivals. Let's figure out a way to do it through the small festivals.
No doubt.